Who the is Mario? If you think I'm too old for this fight, you need to come tell me in my face.
Jake Paul recently got knocked out during a sparring session with Mike Tyson and immediately cancelled their fight. But it wasn't just the embarrassment of getting floored by Tyson that got to him, it was the new rules Tyson demanded after their encounter in the ring. Tyson, with over 40 years of experience, has seen it all and noticed things that didn't quite add up during their sparring. When you're trying to pull something sneaky in front of a boxing veteran who's been in the game since before you were born, you're bound to get caught. Tyson's sharp eye and vast experience were more than enough to spot any trick Jake Paul might have tried. Jake Paul's recent knockout in a sparring session with Mike Tyson was more than just a physical defeat, it was a harsh reality check. Cancelling the fight immediately after wasn't solely due to the embarrassment of getting floored by the legendary boxer. The real issue was the new rules Tyson imposed after their encounter. With over 40 years of experience, Tyson isn't easily fooled, and he quickly noticed things that didn't add up. Jake's plan to outsmart a veteran like Tyson was overly optimistic, and now he has no choice but to face the consequences. And the sparring session wasn't just a random event, it was a desperate move by Jake Paul's camp after his world began spiraling out of control following a chaotic press conference. That press conference struck a deep nerve in Jake's fragile confidence, shaking his brand to its core. To make matters worse, Mike Tyson appeared on Logan Paul's podcast, where he didn't hold back. Tyson, a living legend, called Jake out as a loudmouth more interested in trash talk and chasing money than actually stepping up in the ring, challenging the very persona Jake has built as the fearless, trash-talking king of boxing. The verbal slap from Mike Tyson stung Jake Paul harder than any punch he had ever taken. But let's be real, Jake Paul isn't the kind of guy to take a beating and walk away quietly. His ego took those hits like a bull seeing red. Tyson's words weren't just insults, they were daggers that cut right through Jake's overinflated sense of self. So what does Jake do when his pride is on the line? He goes all in. He demands a sparring session with Tyson, convinced that this is his chance at redemption, his opportunity to prove to the world and himself that he's more than just a YouTuber pretending to be a boxer. Jake needed this sparring match to show he had what it takes to stand toe-to-toe with a heavyweight legend. This wasn't just about saving face, it was about clawing his way back to respectability. But Tyson, ever the crafty veteran, saw through Jake's bravado. To him, Jake's demand wasn't just a challenge, it was a golden opportunity to see what this young pretender was really made of. Jake might have thought he was prepared, but Tyson knew better. Jake Paul thought he was calling the shots, but in reality Mike Tyson was setting the stage. Accepting the sparring challenge was Tyson's way of luring Jake into a trap, a chance to test him under real pressure and see if he could handle the heat when the gloves did the talking. Tyson knew the ring reveals all, making this sparring session a defining moment in Jake's boxing career. Even Tyson's friends were concerned for Jake, seeing the potential for disaster. After what he witnessed in the ring, Tyson wasn't about to agree to the original fight terms. One of the biggest changes he demanded was a KO-only victory rule, a decision that sent shockwaves through the boxing world. Mike Tyson was convinced that Jake Paul's previous TKO wins were questionable at best, and he wasn't about to let a technicality decide the outcome of their fight. To Tyson, a knockout was the only true measure of a fighter's worth, and he wanted to see if Jake could rise to the challenge. This wasn't just a rule change, it was Tyson throwing down the gauntlet and questioning Jake's legitimacy as a boxer. But Tyson didn't stop there. Knowing that Jake often relies on his corner for guidance when things get tough, Tyson introduced another brutal rule: no corner advice during rounds. Fighters would have to face each round entirely on their own. Jake Paul was forced to rely solely on his instincts and whatever training he had absorbed before stepping into the ring. With no one to turn to and no one to bail him out when the punches started landing, Tyson's new rule was designed to strip Jake of his safety nets and see if he could survive the fight on his own merit. The psychological impact of these changes was like a hammer blow to Jake's already shaky confidence. Tyson's game plan was clear: push Jake so far out of his comfort zone that he would either crumble or find a way to rise to the occasion. This was more than just a fight, it was a mental and physical test that could either make Jake a true contender or break him entirely. As the days ticked by, the reality of Mike Tyson's new rules began to set in for Jake Paul. Once confident and swaggering like the king of the ring, Jake was now facing a fight that felt more like a nightmare. The KO-only rule meant there were no easy outs, no relying on a referee's mercy, and without corner advice, Jake would be alone in the ring with just his instincts and whatever grit he could muster. Tyson had crafted a showdown designed to test every fiber of Jake's being, tightening the noose with every passing moment. The knockout from Tyson had already shaken Jake to his core, and the new rules only added to the pressure. For the first time, Jake Paul wasn't so sure of himself. His bravado and trash talk, once his shield, now felt hollow as he confronted the very real possibility that he wasn't as invincible as he had always believed. When Jake first learned about the rule changes Tyson had pushed through, it was like being blindsided by a punch he never saw coming. It was August 25th, 2024, and Jake was grappling with the harsh truth of what lay ahead, facing the ultimate test of his boxing career. Jake Paul was in the middle of one of his typical training sessions, probably feeling invincible, when his manager Nikisa Badarian dropped a bombshell: the KO-only victory rule and a ban on corner advice during rounds. The news hit Jake like a freight train, one he couldn't dodge. For someone who always strutted around as if untouchable, suddenly facing a fight that was more about survival than skill was a harsh reality check he wasn't prepared for. The disbelief struck him hard, like a punch to the gut. How could this happen? Wasn't Tyson just an aging legend who should be intimidated by Jake's youth and strength? It turns out Jake was gravely mistaken. Tyson had outmaneuvered him, turning what Jake anticipated as a victory lap into a potential disaster. Panic began to set in as Jake's confidence, once as loud as his trash talk, started to waver. This wasn't merely a tweak to the rules, it was Tyson laying a trap designed to expose every weakness Jake had hidden beneath his layers of bravado. The frustration Jake felt was palpable, and he couldn't keep it to himself. That evening, Jake Paul took to Instagram stories and Twitter, unleashing a series of rants fueled by desperation and anger. He accused Tyson of setting him up with the new rules, claiming Tyson was trying to sabotage him out of fear of being beaten by a younger, stronger fighter. Jake portrayed Tyson as a bully, an old dog trying to change the game. As expected, the posts went viral. After all, it's Jake Paul we're talking about. However, the reaction wasn't the wave of support he hoped for. Adding to his troubles, Jake found himself in the midst of a legal storm. On August 26, 2024, just a day after his social media outburst, his legal team, led by attorney Ariel Emanuel, began pushing back against the escalating situation. Jake Paul's legal team pushed back hard against the rule changes, arguing they weren't part of the original fight contract signed in July. Jake claimed Tyson's camp was reneging on their agreement, and that the changes constituted an unfair breach of contract. However, insiders started leaking details to the press, revealing a different story. Sources told ESPN's Mike Coppinger that Jake had initially agreed to Tyson's terms without much objection. The original contract included clauses allowing Tyson to request changes based on fighters' conditions leading up to the match. Eager for the fight and the associated payday, Jake had apparently overlooked these stipulations, which now seemed to be coming back to haunt him. The legal battle quickly turned against Jake Paul, with the same clauses he had initially overlooked now coming back to haunt him. This left him with very little legal wiggle room. The narrative shifted swiftly. Instead of seeing Jake as the victim of Tyson's tricks, the public began viewing him as someone who had underestimated the stakes and failed to do his homework. The legal dispute evolved beyond the rule changes to focus on Jake's credibility and his ability to handle the pressure of a high-stakes fight. As the gauntlet was thrown down, everyone wondered what Jake Paul's next move would be. With the pressure mounting, every tweet, post, and leaked rumor only fueled the fire. What was once a fight destined to be a spectacle was now hanging by a thread, with Jake's reputation and career on the line.